The ballroom shimmered like a dream painted in gold and white. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, scattering light across the marble floor where elegantly dressed couples swayed to the rhythm of soft music. Laughter rippled through the air, mingling with the scent of roses and champagne. Yet in the corner, near the open bar, Ethan Cole stood quietly with a glass of water in his hand, his posture relaxed but his eyes distant. He wasn't there to celebrate love. He was there because his best friend, Jason, the groom, wouldn't take no for an answer. "You've been locked up in your world long enough," Jason had said. "Come. Just one night. Smile a little." Ethan had agreed, mostly out of guilt, but now that he was surrounded by love and light, he realized how far away he was from both. Ethan had once known the feeling of belonging at a wedding, the excitement, the vows, the trembling joy of saying forever. But that had been years ago, before tragedy stole the warmth from his life. When his wife, Rachel, died of cancer, he had sworn off events like this. The music, the lights, the sight of two people promising eternity, it all hurt too much. For 5 years, Ethan had buried himself in work and fatherhood, raising his little girl, Lily, alone. She was his world, his reason to get up each morning. But tonight, Lily was spending the night with his mother, and he was forced to face what he'd spent years avoiding, a celebration of love he no longer believed in. He shifted uncomfortably as the band began to play a slow tune, the kind that pulled lovers closer. His fingers tightened around the glass, and for a fleeting moment, he thought about leaving quietly. No one would notice. He'd already fulfilled his duty, he'd shown up, smiled through the ceremony, even toasted the couple. The door wasn't far. Just a few more steps and he could vanish back into the night. But as he turned, a soft, melodic voice stopped him. "You're not leaving already, are you?" Ethan froze and turned toward the voice. Standing before him was a woman in a pale blue dress that shimmered softly under the lights. Her eyes were warm, her smile genuine, the kind that disarmed without effort. "You don't even know me," he said with an awkward half-smile. "Maybe not," she replied, tilting her head slightly. "But I know when someone needs a reason to stay." Her words were gentle, almost teasing, yet something about them struck deep. She extended her hand toward him, palm open. "Dance with me?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "I don't dance," he murmured. "Neither do I," she said with a grin. "But tonight isn't about perfection, it's about moments." Something in her voice, something soft and fragile, tugged at the walls he'd built around his heart. Against his own better judgment, Ethan set his glass aside and took her hand. Her skin was warm, her grip firm but comforting. As they stepped onto the dance floor, the noise of the world faded. For the first time in years, Ethan allowed himself to breathe, not as a father, not as a widower, but simply as a man lost in the rhythm of a song and the mystery of a stranger who, somehow, felt familiar. The soft melody flowed around them as Ethan moved stiffly at first, uncertain, his hand resting lightly on the woman's waist. Her touch was gentle, her movements graceful, guiding him through the rhythm as though she'd been doing this her whole life. The ballroom lights shimmered on her hair, and for the first time that evening, Ethan found himself smiling, just a little. She looked up at him with a knowing expression that made him uneasy, as if she could see right through the calm mask he'd worn for years. "You've done this before," she teased softly, catching him off guard. "I can tell." He shook his head with a small laugh. "Not in a long time," he admitted, his voice low, touched with something like sorrow. They moved in silence for a few beats, the hum of the crowd blending with the soft brush of her dress against the floor. Something about her felt familiar. Ethan couldn't place it, but there was something in her voice, her laughter, it stirred a faint memory that had long been buried under the dust of years. "I know this sounds strange," he said finally, "but have we met before?" She looked up, surprise flashing briefly in her eyes before she smiled again, sadly this time. "Once," she replied quietly. "But you wouldn't remember me." Her answer only deepened the mystery. Ethan studied her face carefully, searching for a clue. Her eyes were kind, her expression soft, but behind that smile was something deeper, a story he didn't yet know. "You sure about that?" he asked, a curious tilt in his voice. "Because something tells me I should." She laughed lightly, a sound so warm it pulled a forgotten memory from the corners of his mind. He remembered a night years ago, the sterile smell of a hospital room, the steady beep of machines, his daughter, Lily, weak and pale, clutching a small teddy bear. And there had been a nurse, a woman who had brought him coffee at 3 in the morning and said, "You're not alone in this." The voice, the laugh, it was her. Ethan stopped dancing, his hand tightening around hers. "Wait," he said softly. "You were there, when Lily was in the hospital, weren't you?" The woman looked up, her eyes glistening as she nodded. "I thought you wouldn't remember," she whispered. "But yes. I was her nurse, Maya Harper. The name fell from his lips like a memory resurrected. "You stayed past your shift," he said slowly. "You sat with us when she was scared. You brought her crayons." Maya smiled faintly. "She drew me a sun and said it was for the lady who brings light." Her voice trembled at the memory. "I never forgot her, or you." The music swelled around them, but neither moved. Time seemed to pause, caught between then and now. Ethan's chest tightened as the realization sank in. This wasn't just a stranger who'd asked him to dance. This was someone who had once stepped quietly into his darkest hour and brought him hope when he had none. And now, years later, she had found him again, without even trying. As the music faded, Ethan and Maya stood still, their hands still joined as if letting go would shatter something fragile that had bloomed between them. Around them, the crowd burst into laughter and applause as the next lively tune began, but they didn't move. Ethan's mind spun with memories, the cold hospital nights, the fear in his little girl's eyes, the quiet comfort Maya had offered when he'd been too exhausted to hope. He remembered her sitting by Lily's bed, humming softly until the little girl fell asleep. Back then, she had been a stranger who somehow made the darkness feel less cruel. And now, years later, here she was, smiling at him across the soft glow of wedding lights. They drifted toward the open terrace, escaping the noise of the ballroom. The night air was cool and smelled faintly of roses. String lights glimmered overhead, casting warm shadows across Maya's face. "I almost didn't come tonight," Ethan admitted, resting his hands on the balcony railing. "Weddings aren't exactly my thing anymore." She nodded, her eyes kind but curious. "You've been through a lot," she said quietly. "When I saw you earlier, I almost didn't recognize you. You look stronger." He let out a breath of soft laughter. "Stronger? Maybe. Or maybe I just learned how to hide it better." He turned to her, his gaze gentle but searching. "I never got to thank you, you know. For everything you did back then. You didn't have to stay with us that night." Maya looked down, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You and Lily needed someone. I just couldn't walk away." There was silence for a long moment, the kind that hummed with unspoken emotion. "Lily's doing well now," Ethan said, a note of pride in his voice. "She's 8, full of life, always painting something. She still draws suns, lots of them." Maya smiled softly. "That makes me happy. She had such a light in her, even when she was sick. I used to think, she got it from her father." Ethan's eyes flickered toward her, the faintest smile tugging at his lips. Maybe she got it from the nurse who refused to let her cry. The moment hung between them, delicate and real. Maya took a small step closer, her expression unreadable but tender. "I used to wonder what happened to you," she confessed. "After Lily was discharged, I wanted to check in, but, sometimes we're told not to cross professional lines." Her voice trembled just enough to betray the feeling beneath her calm. Ethan's heart ached at her words. "You didn't cross any lines," he said softly. "You gave us hope. You gave me something to hold on to." A new song began to play inside, a slow, soulful tune that seemed to echo their silence. Maya tilted her head toward the music, her lips curving into a small smile. "One more dance?" she asked gently. Ethan hesitated only for a second before holding out his hand. "Only if you promise not to disappear this time." She laughed, a sound he hadn't realized he'd missed, and placed her hand in his. As they stepped back into the soft light of the ballroom, Ethan felt something shift deep inside him. The past was still there, but for the first time, it didn't hurt to remember. It felt like healing. It felt like the beginning of something new. The night began to fade into a soft, golden memory as the last song drifted through the air. Guests had started to leave, the laughter mellowing into quiet conversations. The bride and groom shared one final dance, surrounded by twinkling fairy lights and the warm hum of joy. Ethan stood beside Maya, his jacket resting loosely over his arm, feeling strangely at peace. He hadn't expected this, hadn't expected to come to a wedding and find himself remembering how to smile, how to breathe, how to feel. For years, his heart had been a quiet, locked room. Tonight, with one dance, Maya had opened a window in it. They stood together by the terrace doors, watching the lights flicker in the distance. "You know," Ethan said, his tone thoughtful, "I came here tonight to make an appearance, say congratulations, and sneak out before dessert." Maya laughed softly, her eyes bright. "And now?" she asked. He smiled faintly, glancing at her. "Now I'm wondering how I ever thought leaving early was a good idea." She looked at him for a long moment, the corners of her lips curling upward, though there was something uncertain in her expression, something tender and shy. "It's strange," she murmured. "All those nights in the hospital, I used to imagine what your life would be like after. I hoped you'd find happiness again. I never thought I'd be here, seeing it happen." Ethan's eyes softened. "I don't know if I've found happiness yet," he said honestly, "but tonight, it feels closer than it's been in years." Before she could respond, a small, excited voice called from behind them. "Daddy!" Ethan turned to see Lily, his daughter, running across the dance floor, her white dress fluttering as she darted toward him. His mother followed behind, smiling warmly. "We came to surprise you," she said. Lily jumped into his arms, giggling, her eyes wide when she spotted Maya. "Daddy," she whispered loudly, "that's the lady from my picture." Maya blinked in surprise, and Ethan frowned playfully. "Picture?" Lily nodded eagerly, rummaging through her little purse before pulling out a folded napkin. On it was a child's drawing of 3 stick figures, one big, one small, and a woman in a blue dress, all holding hands beneath a yellow sun. "See?" Lily said proudly. "That's you, Daddy. And that's me. And that's Miss Maya. I drew it before bed because I dreamed she came back." The air went still. Maya's eyes shimmered with emotion as she crouched down to Lily's level. "That's beautiful," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Can I keep it?" Lily grinned. "Only if you come for breakfast tomorrow." Ethan's mother chuckled softly behind them, watching the 3 of them with knowing eyes. Ethan met Maya's gaze and felt something unspoken pass between them, something simple, honest, and full of promise. He nodded slowly. "Breakfast, then." As the music faded and the last of the guests drifted away, Ethan watched Maya walk toward the exit, her silhouette glowing in the warm light. He looked down at his hand, and only then noticed that he was still holding Lily's drawing. He smiled, realizing that sometimes, life didn't ask for grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes, it simply offered you a second chance when you least expected it. And all it took to find it was someone reaching out and saying, "Asterisk, dance with me." Asterisk.